Perhaps not even close. He is a research associate with Bhaktivedanta, which is an institute that specializes in the history and philosophy of science. His persistent investigation during the 8 years of writing his widely acclaimed Forbidden Archeology has documented a major scientific cover-up. He's currently researching the companion volume to Forbidden Archeology, entitled The Descent of Man Revisited. It is a startling new explanation of human origins. So let's go, I believe, all the way to Florida and say hello, Michael. I'm going to be cautious here and just say, Michael, how do we pronounce your last name properly, Michael?
Cremo.
Cremo.
That's right.
So I had it right the first time. Very good. Michael, it's a very provocative title, The Hidden History of the Human Race. How wrong do we have it about our origins?
Well, if you listen to the current scientific establishment, they will tell you that human beings like you and I have only been on this planet for about 100,000 years.
Right.
And before that, you would have had more ape-like ancestors. But what I did was look into the entire history of archaeology and anthropology, look at every discovery that's ever been made over the past 150 years, and what emerged from that study is that there is a huge mountain of evidence suggesting that human beings like ourselves have been on this planet literally for hundreds of millions of years. But this evidence has been suppressed, it's been forgotten, it's been ignored, and I think the people of this country need to know about it.
Where do we start? Then you're saying that those who believe in evolution, scientific evolution as it has been laid out for us, those who believe in creation the way it's been laid out for us, both are wrong?
That's right. In other words, I'll give you some examples.
All right.
How this process of what we would call knowledge filtration has been going on for about 150 years. Now, I can give you examples going all the way back to the 19th century, all the way up to the present. Let's start with the present. In 1979, Mary Leakey, who is one of the most famous archaeologists of this century,
indeed,
she discovered in Africa, in a country called Tanzania, some human footprints. And every expert who has looked at these prints has said they are no different than the footprints that you or I might make if we were walking on a beach today. The unusual thing about these prints, however, is that they were found in rock that is 3.6 million years old. Now, I just told you the standard scientific doctrine is that human beings capable of making such prints have only been around for about 100,000 years.
Yes.
Somebody might say, well, maybe the ape men who lived at that time could have made those prints somehow. No, because the fossil foot bones from those ancient ape men are in the museums. They do not fit those prints because they had very long, curved toes.
How do we know that the prints were made as long as you're saying, as long ago as you're saying they were?
This is the information that is given to us by geologists. Now, you could always say, well, perhaps those dates are wrong, but what Richard Thompson, my co-author, and I did as part of our methodology was accept, for the sake of argument, the dates that scientists give.
All right, well, okay, that makes sense. Michael, we're at the bottom of the hour here, and we've got to pause. We've got a lot to do and a long way to go, so stay right where you are, and we'll be back to you in about 4 minutes.
All right.
Michael Cremo is my guest. The Hidden History of the Human Race, his book, and we will probe.
CBC Radio Network.
It absolutely is. Good evening, and Dreamland underway. Welcome. The Hidden History of the Human Race, the entire human race. Michael Cremo, you're back on. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Okay, Michael, it seems to me that if the history is not what the creationists say, and if the history is not what evolutionists say, scientists, then it seems to me there's a whole group of people out there, experts of all kinds, who would like to take you and grind you into little pieces. Am I about right?
Oh, I mean, this book, The Hidden History of the Human Race, has been causing shockwaves in the scientific community. We have Richard Leakey, for example. You know Richard Leakey.
Indeed.
He says your book is pure humbug, does not deserve to be taken seriously by anyone but a fool.
That's exactly the reaction I expected.
I mean, that's exactly what you would expect from one of the architects of this whole paradigm. But on the other hand, we do have some more independent researchers who are really cheering us on. Virginia Steen, Mcintyre, a geologist who had the misfortune to discover some of these unusual things, says this book is a real eye-opener, and that even she herself didn't realize how much evidence there really is out there. So we're getting, as I said, a lot of positive reaction and a lot of negative reaction, and I think that's what you have to expect from a book like this, The Hidden History of the Human Race.
All right. I've got a little sheet from you, and it suggests some myths that we suffer with traditional views, one of them being that we evolved from apes. That is indeed the traditional view, is it not? Ape became man?
Yes, it is. If you go to any natural history museum, you'll see those little displays, the little ape-like creature, and then a slightly bigger ape man, and then a bigger one, and a bigger one, and finally a human being right towards the end at about 100,000 years.
That's right. That's what I've always seen.
In the textbooks, you look on the television specials, Walter Cronkite, Carl Sagan, they'll all be saying that. They'll all be repeating the standard dogma. But the actual facts that scientists have uncovered over the past 150 years simply don't support that.
All right, well, let's say Michael Cremo were to set up a demonstration, a little demonstration of the same exact thing, except following what you believe to be the case. During that whole span, with all those little beings slowly becoming man, what would Michael Cremo's display look like?
Well, we would have humans like us coexisting with these other creatures, just like today. You have human beings, you have apes, you have monkeys, and this will get us into a very interesting subject, but if you take very seriously the reports of the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, the Yeti, it would appear that even today we are coexisting with some of these ape-man-like creatures. Now, we don't say there were no ape-men.
All right, now, does that mean Sasquatch, in your view, is the caveman simply reduced in numbers but still barely here?
Could be a survival of the Neanderthals or the Homo erectus-type creatures. Now, I will say that in many cases, these creatures do seem to have some powers that ordinary animals don't. And this will get us into a whole other subject. But physically, the descriptions of these creatures appear to match the ape-man-like creatures we heard about from science. And I'll also say, now, you were mentioning I'm with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, which is the science studies branch of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and we get a lot of our inspiration from ancient writings of different civilizations, for example, India. And in some of those ancient writings, you do find descriptions of human civilizations going back hundreds of millions of years on this planet. You also find descriptions of very primitive ape-man-like creatures who use stone tools. And when you look at the evidence, it really appears that we have coexisted with these creatures and with apes and monkeys for as long, as far back as you would care to trace.
Would it be your theory that we all arrived on the planet in whatever manner our arrival together?
Yes, that is what the facts actually suggest. And how we got here, that's a subject we intend to go into quite deeply in our next book, which we call Human Devolution.
Devolution.
Mm-hmm.
In what manner do you suggest we got here if we all arrived at the same time? How long ago?
Well, here's an interesting fact. The oldest artifact that we record in our book is 2.8 billion years old.
Billion with a B? I'm sorry, billion with a B?
Billion with a B. This is a grooved metallic sphere that was found in South Africa by miners. They're mining near a town called Ottosdalen in South Africa, a mineral called pyrophyllite. And when the miners go into these deposits, they're finding perfectly round metal spheres, and this metal is very hard. It's so hard that you can't even scratch it with a steel point, which means it's about as hard as diamonds. And one of these spheres in particular had 3 parallel grooves going around its equator, and no one has come up with a natural explanation for how these things could have been formed. Now, a lot of them are kept in a natural history museum in a little town called Klerksdorp in South Africa, and the Rolf Marx, who is the curator there, sent us some photographs of these objects, which you can see some in our book. But the mineral deposits in which these things are found, in which the miners found them, are over 2 billion years old. Now, so that's taking us back quite far.
Sure is.
According to your standard accounts, you wouldn't have it. You would just have some maybe one-celled creatures living in the ocean at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So we think, and this is something that the standard scientists recognize. For example, William Howells, who's, again, one of the big anthropologists of this century, one of the architects of the current paradigm, when he read the hidden history of the human race, he said, well, Michael, what you've done here is you've called into question not only our whole picture of human origins, but our whole picture of how life could have arisen on this planet. What you're suggesting is that no evolutionary idea that you could possibly think of could work, and that's a fact. So where we're headed is towards some kind of extraterrestrial.
Well, I was going to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are you believing then that some sort of extraterrestrial source is responsible for our creation, our placement here, and is still to this day watching over us? Is that?
Well, I'll tell you what we're looking at. Right at the present moment, you've got 3 main theories of human origins. You've got, number 1, the Darwinian idea, that we evolved from some simple one-celled creature.
Yes.
You could call that descent with modification, but starting with the simple things. And then gradually all the other plants and animals, and finally the human beings come.
Yes.
Then you have the standard creationist idea, which is that God pops it all into being somehow right in the beginning.
Right.
Then you have what I would call the extraterrestrial hypothesis, which places us as members of a kind of cosmic hierarchy, and there are contacts between different planets and solar systems.
Yes.
Now, from what we can see, my co-author and I, Richard Thompson, and drawing on some of our sources in these ancient Sanskrit writings, we're going to be taking elements from all 3 of those ideas and making a new synthesis. We think there's something, and Darwin had a little bit right, that there's some kind of descent with modification, but from what we can see, the descent is from higher beings, not on this planet. In other words, not starting out with a one-celled creature, but starting out with some very powerful human-like creatures in this cosmic hierarchy.